either a day after your kids have started school, the day that your kids have started school, or they're starting tomorrow. In the case of my kindergartner, and Michael's kindergartner is probably starting tomorrow too. So thank you for joining us during this very busy week. We have an incredibly exciting topic today, the power of invisible design. And we have a very dynamic, talented speaker who's going to be presenting to us. As always, we are grateful to provide this offering free of charge to our members because of the generosity of the College of St. Scholastica. And I just want to note that there was a great celebration at the College of St. Scholastica yesterday, the grand opening of the new Student Center. And as a part of that, one of the senior leaders there, Dr. Rick Wavoir, who's the Dean of Strategic Development at the college, was present and was a big part of that project. And so we're grateful that Rick has been able to get some rest after the big day and be here with us today. So Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I just want to say thank you deeply for the sponsorship of this educational series.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And it was great to have you at the ribbon cutting yesterday. Matt spoke along with other area leaders, and yeah, we're really excited to open our brand new $17 million student center. We got a wonderful new coffee shop in there, huge fireplace, open areas, a lot of study spaces for our students. So you're all welcome to visit sometime. So, and if you do, I'm happy to buy you a cup of coffee. So. I'd like to thank Matt and his team for offering this series. The Stender School is honored to sponsor it. Just some other updates on our campus. Our fall semester started yesterday. It's great to have students, faculty, and staff back on campus. We're enrolling students for our January starts in our online programs, including Masters in Applied Data Analytics, our MBA in Leadership and Change, as well as our Masters of Social Work. We also have January starts for our online degrees in psychology, social work, and a variety of other business majors. If you have any questions, please let me know. Finally, thanks to Michael for presenting today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Wavoir. Yeah, Scholastica has so many great things going on. My wife was a graduate of the Masters of Social Work program, and going into it, I had no idea just how diverse that master's degree can be. She's now a child psychotherapist. And so it's wonderful that Scholastica has always been ahead of the curve on whatever the trend is in higher education, whether that's adult learning, non-traditional learning, online learning, or meeting the needs of our businesses and our workforce right now. When I think about especially the Stender School of Leadership, Business, and Professional Studies. So Rick, thanks again. Appreciate it. I now have the great honor of introducing our speaker for the day, Michael Smisek, who is the owner of Šek Studios in downtown Duluth. If you aren't familiar with where it's at, I think we all owe Michael a big debt of gratitude for moving into what had been the Electric Fetus space, which is an iconic space in downtown Duluth on a corner that we all drive past probably far more than we even realize. So to have a high quality, high integrity business like his in that space is really something that is helpful to our downtown as we navigate current challenges and try to get to our downtown's greatest era. He also serves as the creative director for the studio. Many people here are familiar with DLH Clothing that he co-owns with his wife, Sarah. An iconic brand in Duluth. They, of course, had a brick and mortar store in Lincoln Park and are kind of recalibrating on a brick and mortar space, but at the same time, that clothing is still available. And I also wanted to mention, because sometimes business owners are a little humble when it comes to this, but the clients that Michael has had at Šek Studios really are powerhouse organizations from within Duluth. To name a few, Vicre Distillery, which of course is in Canal Park in the Palucci building, the Duluth Children's Museum, Duluth Playhouse, Recovery Alliance Duluth, a very important group doing important work, National Bank of Commerce, and projects that range from custom illustration and branding to website design and photography. Michael holds not one, but 2 bachelor's degrees. And in 2022-2023, Michael was an adjunct professor of graphic design in the UMD Department of Art and Design. I also want to make sure to note that something that has been clear in talking to Michael and in the time that I've spent talking to his wife, Sarah, is that family is incredibly important to them. And that matters when we look at the leaders that we have in our community. They have 2 younger children, one of which, like I mentioned, is starting kindergarten, one's a little bit older. And certainly that is an underlying motivation for Mike's work. But it also, his desire for that work also stems from wanting to listen and reflect while solving complex problems through visual communications across mediums. The motto for all of his work could be summarized as thoughtful design with your story in mind. I love that he sees that work as a partnership rather than a client and the business. I think that says a lot about his character and the character of his studio. So we want this today to be a conversation. We want people to feel free to ask questions. So what would be easiest for us is if you put your questions in the chat and we can kind of monitor that as we go, rather than just verbalizing them. At the end, we'll be able to have more direct dialogue if there's time for it. So without further ado, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Rick, thanks again for the sponsorship. And I will turn it over to Michael Smisek to talk about Šek Design Studios. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. I'm excited to share some of what we've been thinking about here. I'm going to share my screen and jump into my presentation here. And I've got, please do, like, if you've got questions, put those in the chat. And if you, at any point, have any questions, let me know. The presentation is not for you to, sit back and frantically take notes. I'm using this as a guideline, as talking points. And I've got examples of work that we've done and kind of how I think about the work that we do. I probably have more in the presentation than I can get to today with our time, but and I do want to have some time for questions at the end. But I also, just like these guys said, if you do have questions afterward, we run out of time, I mean, you can always reach out to me. I love helping people, just sitting down, meeting with people and answering questions they have about wherever you work, however you apply this sort of thinking to your work. So I'll jump over to my presentation here. One second. Move you guys out of the way here. All right. Okay. Everybody can see. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Got it? Awesome.
Looks great.
Okay. All right. So creating invisible design. So today, sort of a rough outline here. We're going to talk about why I'm calling it invisible design. What is that? The steps that I take to create invisible design. We're going to go over a Duluth Coffee Company packaging case study. We're going to look at examples of, what is decoration versus design? Why is that different? We're looking at, building a story into what you're making, and talking about how the idea of something is what kind of rules the direction. And then any challenges that, come up all the time, and covering final thoughts. Again, we've got a lot of stuff. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to it all in the hour, but I'll do my best. Also, not knowing, I would love to have gotten to know what everybody else does in their roles, but I feel like if we jump in all that, it's going to take a lot of time. So, this kind of way of thinking can apply to whatever roles you have. I would be interested if you feel comfortable, throw like your, how this relates to your role at work, what your title is or whatever you want to put in the chat, just to kind of see kind of a roll call of what everybody is, where everybody's coming from as far as designers, marketing people, leaders, whatever it might be. That'd be interesting to see in the chat as well. Okay, so here's our icebreaker. How do you say the name of my business? Anybody brave?
I mean, I'm willing to go for it if nobody else wants to. I was trying my best.
Is there enough clues here? Go for it.
Šek Design Studios. Šek.
Who else? Anybody else?
I'll guess Šek.
Šek. That's right. So my last name is Smisek. This is Šek Design. Thanks for chiming in. So this is our space. This is this is when you enter, and we've got this wall with frames here. And this is an example to me of a fun way to get people to say our name correctly, because we know that's a challenge, but it's a very, to me, it's part of my name. It's an important part of my heritage. And so teaching people to say that correctly and doing it in a fun way doesn't feel like extraneous labels or anything like that. It just feels interactive and engaging. So that is an example to me of invisible design, where we created something that you don't even realize you're interacting with a design. You're just having an experience that lets you get to the right answer and not feel intimidated. We want people to walk in and not feel intimidated by the name. So they have a little bit of practice even while they walk into the studio space. All right. Why are we going backwards here? Okay, so what is invisible design? So to me, it's about making the design disappear in the sense that it doesn't distract or overwhelm the user, but rather it enhances the experience by making the interactions feel natural and effortless. It's kind of philosophy that prioritizes what the user needs, not what the maker is trying to make, ensuring that the design can come up with the communication that you need to come up with in its most straightforward, unobtrusive way possible. But obviously, many of us have heard the simplest designs, the simplest things are usually the hardest, because it's easy to keep adding things, adding features, adding whatever. It's really hard to strip everything away and have the thing that you're making still work. And like I said, I do graphic design work mainly, but I think about this in product design that we use every day. I think about it in architecture. I think about it in video. I think about it in everything that we interact with as humans, because that's kind of, to me, what design is. So I try to use as many examples of it outside of graphic design as possible, because to me, there's no difference. So for most of us, design is invisible until it fails. So you usually notice something not working if the design fails. And I'm going to put a couple examples in that in a little bit here. So I'm not going to expect you guys to memorize this. We're going to go through each one in more depth here. But the invisible design checklist. So first, you need to know why you're doing it. Why do you need a new logo, package, marketing campaign? And then narrow your research. So who is this for? Why do they need to know? What will they do with the information? Go into research. What have other people done to achieve a similar goal? How can I adapt my brand, my voice, my experience to reach this goal? I think a lot of times this step is skipped, where people don't do the research. They just jump right into designing and trying to come up with a new idea. And the fact of the matter is there are no new ideas. We know this. You have to you can't just go around the wall. You have to go through the wall to learn something in design, learn why something else worked, and then you adapt those pieces and you integrate those into what you're making. And by just the combination of adding your voice, your brand, and then maybe using another technique, you're already creating something new by adding all these other pieces that need to be included. That's what makes it new. It's not new because you sat down and started to try to make something new. And then concept ideas. So focusing on big ideas and the hierarchy of information and what's most important. Adding things like flourishes, colors, different typefaces. Those are just decoration. They're not actual direction or concept. We'll dive more into that later too. And then you need to be able to, I'd say, other than research, the other thing that people have a hard time with when creating things is looking at it very objectively. Usually it's too personal and they can't look at it and say, you know, what if I've never seen this before? I gotta put on my fresh eyes. How would I look at this? How, you know, connected to the audience are you? Can you sort of be an actor and pretend that you are the target market for that amount of time that you're reviewing your own work or other people's work? What's your experience? What can be taken away, or what can be removed, I should say, and then refine those things. So based on your feedback, you refine what you're working on and then deliver, you know, that polished, finished product, whatever that might be. I'm taking a quick little peek at what everybody's roles are here. Cool. Graphic design, marketing manager. Nice. Okay. Very cool. I'll try to apply what we're talking about to, again, not just, this isn't just like a graphic design geek out session, which we could do that too, but we're not gonna. All right. So why do you need this new thing? Every time you make something, there's a reason you're making it. You're not just making it for no reason, right? So really understand what happened. Is there a change in leadership or ownership? Sometimes that's a bigger, like a rebrand or something. Do you have a new mission or vision? Sometimes people go through their strategic planning and it might not be a new owner, but it might be a new way of looking at the business or organization. Did you introduce new products? Are there new competitors out in the market? Did you change your location? Is there a new season coming up? What is it? I don't know. What did I miss here? What other things might lead you to the path of needing new designs? Anybody have any other ideas? Did I miss anything? Okay, so
Michael, I was on mute. I was just gonna add.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
When you, I don't know if I saw it on the list, but when you add a new business unit, so if you are establishing a subsidiary or something like that, then I think that would be important also.
Yeah, definitely.
I also wanted to chime in here and say that sometimes it's about updating a dated look. You know, sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, the coloration maybe just needs to be updated to a current shade of green, as opposed to something that was really the thing in 1985.
So the why there would be, maybe you were following a trend from before and now you want to get out of that rut that you were stuck in.
Exactly.
Your competitors are looking a little bit more fresh these days and you need to keep up with that. So yeah, refreshing the brand for sure. Yeah, thanks guys. Identify who. So this is a big one. Obviously you need to know who you're talking to. You can't just make something because you're not making it for yourself. You're making it for someone else. So who is it for? Where are they? What do they care about? Why do they need to know? Not why do you need to know, or why are you making it? And what will they do with the information? What I give the comparison is, let's say I worked with two, Matt mentioned Vikra Distillery, right? let's say we worked with another distillery. Well, if I'm working for 2 distilleries, the gut reaction of one of them, if I'm doing package design for them, they might think, well, I want it cooler. I want it better than the one you're doing for the other guys. You know, I'm not trying to compete with myself, right? I'm not trying to make it cooler, better, more, you know, that's kind of like cooler than what, right? Like, what's the comparison? How do I we need something to measure it against. And so what I try to think about is I'm making it better for the people who would be attracted to Vikra and their values and their mission and what they do and how they do what they do. So I'm making it better for Vikra. I'm creating a stronger magnet. So they're going to pull in more people who would be attracted to them. And if I'm working with a different distillery, I'm not trying to look at Vikra and do the same thing and do it just a little bit better or just a little bit more, whatever. I'm actually thinking about their business, their target market, and making the magnet just that much more robust for who they want to talk to. So thinking about who is the most important part. And then you don't have to worry so much about, well, how am I going to make this really good? Or how am I going to make it different than the one we did for this other group? We work with tons of nonprofits and arts organizations, and everything we do, yeah, it shares some sort of kind of like the clean, simplistic quality, but they're always geared toward them as a group, and then focus on their audience, not just kind of a general, hey, here's a nonprofit arts organization brand. So that's what I think about when it comes to the who. And then what's out there. So a lot of designers have a hard time. They're so excited to work on something. You're so excited to jump in. You don't take the time to look at what else came before you, and you make the same mistakes that have been made before. I kind of give the analogy, and you know, like they said, I taught a little bit at UMD, and one thing I learned that was so different is like, I feel like if you were to take music courses and you're in college to learn an instrument, at first you have to learn all these other songs written by all these other people. They don't ask you to jump in and make up your own composition, or figure out a new way to play the instrument. You have to learn what came before and the techniques that came before, so you know what's good and what's not good. And then you can go ahead and make something. And you know, the best compositions, songs, pieces of music, they're not based on just trying to make something new. They're based on a story and inspiration, and designs have to be the same thing. So you're gathering in your research phase, you need to learn how to see what's good and pull those things in and learn how to make those things and adapt them. Not copy them, but adapt them and learn what's good, so that you know when you make something, it reaches that level of quality. And then what's the big idea? So focus on big ideas and hierarchy of information. Find ways to form ideas without spending too much time. Like if you're working on an idea, don't spend a bunch of time trying to make the design perfect, because if the idea is not good, then the design, as you know, if you make the design perfectly, it won't really matter. It's not really going to land with that audience. So adding flourishes, colors, typefaces, that's decoration. That's not direction. So think about, you know, a good concept that you can sketch out and people just get it right away. Like, you know, you think about a great premise to an SNL skit, or you know, a great premise to a movie where the character, you just get like the problem and the conflict. Just hearing about it can make you go, oh yeah, I can imagine that's going to be a great story. Same thing with designs. If you have a great idea, that'll come through and you can work through your idea more quickly without focusing so much on getting the design perfect. And then obviously feedback, we talked about this. So you got to look at it from a different perspective. How would somebody react if they never have seen this before? How connected, check in with yourself. How connected to your audience are you? What's your overall experience if you're an audience member looking at this thing? What can be taken away, or in other words, what can be removed? Is something being said twice? We're going to look at examples of that. This stage is kind of as a designer, it's a practice of tough love and honesty. How much objective feedback can you give to yourself? Can you be very honest with yourself and say, you know what, that doesn't work. I need to go back and do that. It's a little tricky when you take your designs very personally. That's more like self-expression, and design, the work that we do, is communication. So it's not self-expression. So whether you're either communicating it clearly or you're not. And I try to make design as black and white and systematic as I can. I know it's not, because it's an industry that is there's a lot of gray spaces. You know, I kind of envy being able to, you know, do an oil change on a car. It's like, you know, you need this wrench, you need this filter, you need this type of oil to do the work, and then you're done. But design is so much more ambiguous than that. So I try to create as many sort of hard line checkpoints as I can for myself and my team, so that we don't end up, you know, going down the wrong direction. And then obviously, you know, for those of you who are designers and you have to meet with your leadership team, or if you are on the leadership team, you know, presenting an idea is sort of like a sales pitch. So at that point, you sort of are in the sales position. And like I said, you're not presenting your idea. One of the things I tell our designers here is, when they meet with a client, don't be nervous that the client won't like your idea, because it's not your idea. It's not your self-expression. It's their solution, right? It's a different way of thinking about it. So if you're confident that it solves their problem, then you don't have to be worried that they're going to like it or not, because you're the one who should be guiding it, and saying, hey, this is what I think will work for you, and we have other ways to check that we've completed that work as well. So, you know, I'm going pretty fast. Are there any questions at this point? You know, good? Okay. All right, so I'm going to jump into a case study. So this is where it kind of gets fun. So Duluth Coffee came to us, and they needed a new package design for their black label coffees. So these are the coffees that are not blended. They're coming straight from one farmer. You know, they are a little bit more expensive, but they are, you know, fabulous example of what coffee can be. And they really wanted to somehow achieve that with their new packaging. And they're really clear that, like, they want to talk about coffee in a way that's different. They're not just serving light, medium, and dark coffee. Most people know they like something like that. They kind of got used to that language, but they don't want that to be the way that people talk about coffee, right? I mean, we've seen coffee sort of following the same path that like the craft breweries have followed, where before it was like, oh, you just go get a light beer. But now there's so many other varieties that people are educated. They know how to talk about what they like. They kind of want to do that with coffee. Okay, so here's a sort of typical logical approach to a problem with these certain steps along the way. So you'd have your starting point. You've got your goals that you need to maintain. Let's say these are all the objectives in this project. The kind of the high point. So you need to maintain the branding, of course. You can't change that up. You need to play within the industry. So what do I mean by that? You can't create a package design that looks like it belongs to Nike when you're creating coffee. So you have to play within the industry of coffee and the norms that are already in that world. If we're doing a rebrand for a dentist, we can't make the dental office look like, you know, a hardware store. There's norms that you kind of need to follow or be aware of in that industry, but then from there you can be flexible. We need to describe the product clearly. We need to feature the maker, the origin. We need to create a system for the staff to use and replicate this idea that we have. And we want to elevate that price point, because these are going to be more expensive coffees than people are used to. So it needs to look that way. So any guesses why this wouldn't work? Kind of an ABCD if I'm addressing all the goals, why couldn't I move through the project like this? Brave souls.
This is Matt, I'll take a stab at it. Is
Sure.
it because there's not enough opportunity? It's so linear, there's not enough chance for iteration or feedback loops. That would be my stab.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go to the next slide and kind of show the way that we sort of think about this. So it's more, like you said, it's more of a conceptual start broadly, and then you start to narrow in on pieces together. So if you've got that look that really looks good as the Duluth coffee brand still, but it doesn't describe the product as well. All these circles in a perfect world, all these circles, this Venn diagram, they all kind of have this common crossover point, and that's the solution of a very, very seamless design. And I'm going to show examples of concepts we had that didn't reach this point where the circles might be a little bit more spread apart. So it doesn't mean the design is bad. That's not really what I'm saying. But to get to that true, really like integrated, invisible design where you don't really notice that you're looking at something that's been designed, the solution just feels like it's natural. And it's, the irony is when you're talking about it, everybody looks at it and goes, yeah, that's what it is. It's like, well, it took a long time to get to that solution, but that's the feeling you want people to have, is like the obvious, like, well, yeah, of course it's that way. But when you get frustrated is when things don't happen that way, right? We've all been to a restaurant, and when you leave and you go, well, that was actually really good. Why would anybody go to a restaurant and say that, other than the fact that maybe the branding, the experience, the preparation going into it didn't feel like it was going to be good? It gave you some sense of apprehension, but then you're surprised that it actually was good. So something in that, you're noticing something in that experience, you're noticing something that's not quite aligned. All right. Okay, so here's the original bags. And so we've got the original bags. The hierarchy of the design was brand first, farmer was next, location, and then the region, the farm, the variety, and the process were all in the same line. And then the artwork, it's a watercolor, but it's meant to look like a tropical farm growing coffee. Here they all are on the shelf. And you can see that because all of them look the same or very similar, they need to have these different labels next to each one to highlight the region or the farmer. And so they had to make something extra to go with the bags just to describe what they were. So they were having trouble with people getting mixed up. So we jump into this long process with them, and we're meeting with them, talking with them about why, who. We're doing research. We're looking at the world of coffee packaging, what that looks like, coming up with concepts. And of course, we get feedback from ourselves and feedback from the owners, and then we refine it and deliver the final piece. That's the tangible process of this. So here are some concepts that we started with. And you can see they vary, from a package being printed completely black to adding a sticker that's got some artwork on it, playing with different ways of identifying, which farmer goes with which bag, or, which color associated with each farmer. We've got other ones here where you're thinking about doing different artwork that matched the flavor notes. So you could get an idea of like, this one's going to be fruity and tropical, this one's going to be more earthy, whatever it might be. So these are just rough kind of concept layouts that we're trying to work on, seeing how they work as a system. you know, these aren't too sacred. These are kind of quick ideas, but you know, and this is a good example, like these are not very different concepts. Yes, I've spent some time coming up with different ways of laying this out, but they all kind of fit within the same idea, the same language. And in the end, this idea doesn't really work. And if we look at those other concepts, you know, in some of them, we maybe weren't maintaining the brand of Duluth Coffee. They're known for their craft color bags. Maybe we're not maintaining the brand enough. They definitely play within the coffee industry. Maybe some of them, you know, our feedback originally was we need to say Duluth a little bit more. So there's people buying this coffee outside the Twin Ports. We needed to say Duluth more clearly, but we don't need to write, you know, it already says Duluth Coffee. They know where it's coming from, but how can we show Duluth? Confusion around maybe the farmer, the process, the region. So we're trying to hone in on how do we talk about the coffee in the similar way we talked about the, you know, different types of beer, and then create a system that they can use, the internal marketing team can use moving forward without always having to come back to us. So here's a quick little fun thing to look at. It's like how we talk about things matters, right? So here's a menu. There's nothing wrong with the menu, but this menu is definitely organized by a manager who knows the inventory of their restaurant, right? We've got draft, discount, domestic, craft, non-alcoholic. It's like, who is this for? What is this telling you? Isn't it a better experience to look at this menu where you say, I'm looking for something crisp and bright, or I'm looking for something hoppy? It doesn't take a lot more work to make this menu versus this one. They're all the same things. It just takes the perspective of being the person using the menu to think about it this way. So we want to think about this with the coffee too. So our final concept retains that craft look of Duluth Coffee's branding, includes the, you know, we talked about tropics, so it had that watercolor of the coffee farm. We included a drawing of the coffee plant, and then we also included the lift bridge on there. They're illustrated in a style, not watercolor, but they're illustrated in a style that's a little bit more tattoo-y sort of feeling. And if you've ever been into Duluth Coffee or met Eric or whatever, he's just got a little bit more of that feel, right? It feels more like their brand. We're using the D watermark in black on black, which feels like a very sort of black label, higher end product. So that's here, and it's also on the back of the bag. And then it's easy to follow our new naming convention. So we're highlighting the farmer with a color, but we're calling it, you know, Colombian anaerobic or Peruvian washed. So it's kind of like that West Coast IPA, East Coast IPA, those sorts of ways of talking about the coffee that lend to the process and the flavor notes versus somebody just wanting to get light, medium, dark. And then it's, you know, other things we're thinking about is how cost effective is it? So it's very cost effective to print this whole bag all the same, and then just print this label that can be changed out. That way, if you have a misprint, you're not out a bunch of bags, thousands and thousands of bags. So we have a label that can be added to it, but it looks like it's part of the overall design. So here's kind of our mock-up of showing, like, how do you recognize everything that we've been working on? How do they all look? And then now this is what the shelves look like there, where you can clearly tell these are all different coffees. And, you know, even if you learn that you really like the yellow, you don't even know what it is, you like the yellow one, you can tell your spouse, partner, whatever, to, oh yeah, pick me up a yellow, you know, yellow bag. That's what I like. And so it becomes a little bit easier for the user in many different ways. So again, another kind of before and after. So we've got 3 different types of coffee here. They all look identically the same. And then we've got this variety of coffee, and they all look different. but they all feel very naturally Duluth coffee. Any questions on the Duluth coffee stuff, guys? Okay. So there's a fun little graphic here. How many of you, I know I do, how many of you have this type of control in your kitchen? So think about this: wherever labels seem necessary, consider another design. So if you feel like oh yeah, that's fine, we'll just put that there and we'll just label it, people will know. Well, that's kind of a lazy way to do it. There's always a way to do it that's a little more elegant, a little bit more thoughtful. And so this is a great example of not needing labels to know which knob to turn on your burners. And it's, again, another kind of a household everyday thing that we all get used to doing. And it's not that big of a deal. But, you know, when you sort of compound these things, or you try to do labels on all kinds of stuff, then it just becomes really hard for the user to interact with whatever you're working on. So let's look at this design here. So when I make an example of something that's probably too much information, right? When I work on a design for a poster, social media, whatever it is, a marketing piece like this, we're thinking about using the limits of the brand. So what is this for? This is for the Ballet Minnesota. And this is an older ad. I don't really get a huge sense of their branding from this piece. The main headline is the classic Nutcracker. That's definitely clear. Imagery that tells a story or setting, I get a little bit of that. Is there texture that creates depth and space? Photograph has a little bit of texture in the background, and then essential supporting information. So the call to action. That's, I think, where this one gets a little bit out of hand. It's got sort of like this is a little bit of an example to me of like an insurance policy, you know, where it's like, we got to include everything on there because we don't want people to be let down and not know every single thing we can tell them. But in reality, we've all been the viewer of these things. And we know that if you're interested in going to Nutcracker, you're going to go no matter what. It's not the phone number on this ad that's going to make me go. And if I want to go, there's going to be some way for me to find the phone number that's very easy, or I'm going to use a website and I'm going to see what the ticket prices are. I'm going to see the dates. There are some things that are very important, but you know, not every single thing has to be on the things that you're making to make it good. And I think really great design is all about taking away everything that doesn't need to be there. So that's my perspective on something like this, which is this is like a very common thing to see. Again, it's not like it's wrong or bad, but it's not as graceful as it could be. And I think that people react. I like to think about, you know, the way that people react to designs or marketing, especially, is like, we've all heard the car sales ad on the radio. It's super fast. It's super loud. It's kind of yelling at you. It has no respect for your, you know, your time. Usually those feels like the volume goes up when you hear those. So this is, to me, a little bit similar, where it's like, it's telling me so much stuff and the viewer has no time to sort of like interpret what they're looking at. They're just kind of being thrown a lot of stuff. So, you know, when we made something a couple years ago here, we made this billboard for the Minnesota Ballet. We had just done their new branding. But we've kind of created, again, you've got the main headline, you've got the branding woven into it. They had this, their new branding has some gold in it. You've got the essential pieces you need to know. Even the dancers have replaced a letter in the word so that you're still reading the full word, you know what it is, but you're minimizing how much information you need to put on there, but you still get the point. And I would argue that this makes me want to go see it more than the previous example, because it just looks like I'm experiencing this already, and I want to see more of it instead of like a lot of loud noises coming at me at once. So yeah, what can you take away? What can you remove? We worked on the Playhouse logo. Again, everybody at the organization didn't really know if these were like lights or if these were curtains. It's meant to be sort of the Art Deco typeface. They wanted to feel a little bit more modern. So again, we're working the fact that they're doing performances there into the why. And now they have a very flexible brand that they can use, and it says what they do right away without a lot of extra help. So here's another example. The painting on the right is the painting that I made a few years ago now. And I was kind of working on this idea of what can you take away to make it still have the essence of that thing that you're trying to capture. And so people might know this or be familiar with the 57 Chevy, the Bel Air. You know, it's not a painting of a car, but when you look at it, it reminds you of a car. It is that car. So can you capture the essence of what you're trying to say in a simpler way? Speaking of cars, speaking of usability, I mean, now that cars are going electric, you've got simpler dashboards. You don't need to have all the buttons everywhere. If you've got the ability to have a tablet now, obviously you need to think about the user experience on that tablet. But this is an example of, you know, a good example of cleaning things up where you don't need all that extra information. You don't want to overwhelm people. You want to make it easy for them to know what you're trying to say to them or what they should do. So here's a quick example, just a little quick exercise that I put together where, let's say, you know, we've got a client who wants a music, they teach music lessons and they want a waiting room that feels like it's got a music theme. Well, sure, you could buy this like artwork from Amazon and it's music notes and people kind of get it, but it doesn't mean anything. There's no story behind it. There's nothing to gain from it really. And it's kind of cold, right? What if you found a painting or you made a painting yourself that was actually made, you know, this painting example is actually a person who uses sound to create the painting. So the sound waves created this movement, and actually from what I read, this was a Dave Matthews song, right? So maybe a lot of the clients that I'm going to have in grew up on that kind of music, in that era of music. If they know that that's that painting that reminds them of that, that might create more of a connection to what I'm trying to do at that lesson studio. And you're just strengthening the bond that they have with that place, all through this piece of artwork. If you tell them the story, they'll never forget it, and it's going to be more meaningful. They're going to tell other people. It feels more personal, feels more approachable. Just a quick example of how you just try to embed a story or try to think of something that has a little bit more weight to it that you can hold on to, instead of just kind of putting something empty out there. As for ideas and concepts, I mean, you know, these are not things that we did, these next few. These are good examples of, like, it doesn't have to be super expensive to be very effective. So the idea behind this is very solid. This is probably a couple $100 worth of installation of vinyl, and they've got a great ad that'll live there for a while. These next two, it's not hard to create, you know, this cylinder and wrap it. Again, it's probably a few $100, some permission to put it over the steam grate, and now you've got a steaming cup of coffee. You know, a balloon, how much does that cost? How much does spray paint cost? Promoting the movie. It's like these ideas are worth a lot, and sometimes the design itself isn't the main thing. It's the idea that really is valuable. So some little pieces I wanted to point out there. So kind of wrapping all this together, the challenges that most people are going to see when they try to implement invisible design. It's sort of it's a bit more of a disciplined way of doing design work. So making sure that you're using tools and software to make these things, but it's easy to add things to your design. Don't rely on those features in the software to create solutions for you. Try to see the goal, the end, before you even jump into the software, so that the software is just your tool to make the thing. It's not your tool to come up with an idea. And then also for any of you who are working with other stakeholders or leaders within your organization, get used to and try to learn how to educate the people you work with, so they're not thinking about giving you feedback. Hey, I'm going to take this work to my supervisor. What do you think? That person's going to look at it with their own personality. That's just what we do. Try to set up the stage so you can say, hey, what do you think our audience would think about this, so that they can flip the way that they think and not just give you their personal reaction to the work. So educate yourself and your team to look at it from an outside perspective if you can. And then remember that a lot of us who do design work are very inherently, internal facing or expressive as far as the design work we do, but the work we do professionally is all about communication. So it's not self-expression. Don't take it personally. It's your job to be a communicator first, and design is just the tool you're using to communicate. So for people who want templates and they want a quick, easy fix for something, yeah, they're out there. You go do a Google search for templates. You can use them if you want to, but it's never gonna really line up and get your solution pinpoint unless you really do a lot of changes to those, or you search for a long time on those templates to find just the right one. But that's why templates never really work in what we do, for most of what we do. So this is an incomplete idea. You might be missing all the overlap. It might not be a bad design. Again, it's not like just all the parts are just not quite lining up together. And so just a reminder that, I think about invisible design as something you approach from kind of all sides until you find those points that start to overlap. And it is a very small section usually, but that solution is this very sort of elegant piece that you can find within that. So main takeaway, invisible design is really just a term used to describe the process by which all design should be created. So it's nothing fancy. It's really just the process behind a proper design, thinking through every step. And by setting out to create invisible designs, you'll be poised to question motives and challenge your methods to develop better communication in your organization. That's what all this leads to, is if you're asking all these questions and you're going through all these steps, you're going to create better communication for your organization. And then, the last thing is just learn to look at things, learn to recognize great designs, noticing the invisible, and then adapt those techniques for your own projects that you're using. And yeah, just be really observant, because that's the best designers, the best communicators are really good observers, and they let everything absorb first, and then they kind of pick the best things and choose those to put out there. So getting right up until the hour here. So thank you guys for listening. If you have a couple questions, I can sit. I don't have a hard stop for what it's worth. So The last thing I'll say is we do offer consulting sessions. We don't just have to do design work for you. We can work with you or your team to talk about this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, obviously we'd love to help with that too. But yeah, do we have any?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. I loved how well you can articulate all of your thoughts and use your deck really well. We had some people join, we had some people who had to leave, but certainly if there are questions, now would be a good time. It looked like, just kind of looking at the chat, Shannon, I'm not sure if you, if that was a question that you wanted answered around the drawing the line, but I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at when I was looking at the ballet example, the changes you made to the billboard completely made sense because you only have 20 seconds to see what's there and all of that. But from a poster standpoint, where do you personally draw the line to accommodate for accessibility? So, considering that some people might not have a smartphone, or what parameters do you usually put around that to draw that line?
I mean, I'm a proponent for, if somebody wants something, if they want to do something, they still have, even if they're looking at a poster, they still have to do something to make that phone call or get on the website. I feel like the action, I mean, we do put call to action on a poster, and these days, a QR code is a great thing to use. We put a form of it on there, whether it's the easiest one is a phone number or a website, but we just don't list out like every date, all the times, all the, there's some things I think that you can leave out.
Oh yeah, I'm not in disagreement with that. I absolutely, I clean that up for sure. I guess I was just curious about your philosophy, but behind where you draw that line. So,
usually,
I don't think there's
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, in what instance would you say, okay, we're just going to put a QR code on here versus a QR code plus a phone number? I'm just using that as a random example.
Right. Mostly it's like we take as much away as we can until we lose part of the main goal. And then we put that one piece back. So it's not always the same. But if all of a sudden we go, well, yeah, but now people can't, most people call in to get their tickets. Okay, well, we do need to put that in there. So there's things we are definitely, sponsor logos are a great example of something if they're sponsoring it, they got to be on there.
Yeah.
We try to do it in the cleanest way possible, but yeah, so that's a whole other conversation. How do you do it cleanly? But yeah, we try to take away as much as possible. And if we lost something in that process, then we have to put one thing back. But I'd rather be putting something back than continually adding.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, Michael, it looks like you did such a good job that you've answered everybody's questions during your presentation.
Oh, that's lovely.
I
don't know if I believe it, but
no, I think so. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Email is on the screen here if you want to jot that down. Otherwise, our website is the tail end of the address here. So sekdsgn.com. We've got a brand new website. It's got all of our contact info on it. You could reach out. Yeah, that's the easiest way.
Okay. Mike at sekdsgn.com or the website sekdsgn.com. We will be uploading this to YouTube. In addition to that, we'll get it out on some of our social media channels, and it's always appreciated, especially for those who are willing to give some of their time like Michael did, if you will not just like, but share those and expand the reach. And then Michael, I will be reaching out. I'd love a tour of the space. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today, and really appreciate spending some time talking to you. Say hi to your wife and your family for me.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
Sean. Okay, Sean, we'll let you know when the tour is.